Hello, and today I guess I'll do a little recap of the Steam Dev Days event and the things I learned and the interesting things that were discussed. Well, firstly, the first day was about the Steam controller and the Steam machine, and well, I already talked about the Steam controller, but the Steam machine is kind of interesting. So here is my Steam machine. It's very small. Here's the Ouya, and there's a side comparison. So, the Ouya is a little taller and, but, oops, sorry, smaller in the other dimensions. It has HDMI, Ethernet, USB, DisplayPort. Does anyone use that? I don't know. Anyway, so it's actually interesting. I haven't opened it up, but they showed a little picture. It's basically like very tiny motherboard, heatsink, RAM, memory, and then it's using the new Iris Pro graphics, which apparently is Intel's like highest end integrated graphics thing. Which I don't know if you follow, but Intel has made great strides with the integrated graphics, starting with the Sandy Bridge, and I guess this is the Haswell microarchitecture, apparently, and I guess they have a lot of EDRAM or something cool on it. I haven't really benchmarked it, but I mean, it seems to be holding its own pretty well so far. Haven't played around with it that much. So I mean, it's not exactly as small as Ouya, and it's a little louder, but I mean, presumably it can run regular Linux games. So the Steam machine hardware is really cool. And, so the first day was talking about the Steam machine, excuse me, the Steam controller, and developing for Linux. And it's very interesting because Valve is making a big push for Linux development. They're actually sort of putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak, and investing a lot of effort into improving game development, Linux ecosystem. And I think all the talks will be online, but they're making like a GL debugger for Linux that looks really, really amazing. And they're working with Kronos to fix some of the biggest problems in OpenGL. And I don't know if you use OpenGL, but like the biggest problem, at least in my mind, is that the shaders are compiled from text strings and not from an intermediate language, and so the parsing is done by the driver, and you can get parsing errors depending on the different drivers, which is terrible because like you make a typo and it works fine on several drivers, and then you try some new hardware and then it just doesn't run, and you're like, I don't know why, and then it turns out, oh, you mistyped it. And then also for performance, it would be much faster to compile from like an intermediate like bytecode, which is what DirectX does. So apparently Valve is going to push Kronos, the OpenGL standard board, to fix that, which would make me very, 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 very happy. Although the way these things move, I suspect it would be like a long-term plan, so probably be stuck with strings for a while. So then the day two was about VR, and VR is really interesting to me, oh, I should have brought my Virtual Boy out to show my devotion to VR, but it's over there. But the thing about VR, well, is that besides it being really exciting to me, I love 3D movies, 3D everything, is that it's a lot more than a 3D display, and certainly Valve has been putting a lot of research into this and how to create what they call presence. So presence is basically when you can trick your mind into thinking that you're in this virtual scenario. And unfortunately, I didn't get to see their VR prototype. The demos were like half an hour long, and you had to be on this waiting list and be really lucky, and I didn't even know that until I missed my chance. So, but I spoke with friends who had been on it, and they said it was amazing, and I also spoke with a guy at Valve who worked on it, and he said that Crystal Cove, the latest Oculus prototype, is much closer to Valve's best in class VR prototype, which I think even Oculus admits that Valve has the best VR prototype. And Crystal Cove is closer to that than the DK1, and pretty much everyone bagged on the DK1. So if you have the original Oculus development kit, apparently it sucks compared to what they're actually going to release whenever they release. But the most interesting thing about VR to me is, besides the fact that I'm going to love it, is that it basically affects game design in very, very severe ways. And there were a lot of talks about this. And I'm sure Valve's putting them all on the web, but basically you can, if you can't really move the player. Like if you get hit by a rocket, you can't push the player around, and if you doing games like a first-person shooter, we have like strafing and backwards movement can be really disorienting and sort of give motion sickness because those are unnatural movements. And Palmer Luckey, the creator of Oculus, tried to circle strafe on stage whilst giving his talk, which was amusing to watch, but it certainly illustrates that those are kind of unnatural movements. But my question is, like, while I'm going to be excited about VR and I'm going to love it, it seems like everyone's saying this is the next big thing, and this is the, new medium for games. And while I can certainly understand their excitement, and I'm personally excited, it does seem like it's limiting for the types of games you can make, which isn't as appealing to a game developer, because I like ultimate flexibility. I like to be able to create whatever sort of game I want to make with as little rules as possible. But it seems like, due to the idea that you're creating an artificial world, you have to make it obey sort of like real world laws. In terms of like movement and the character, and then you have to do head tracking. Head tracking is very important. But certainly it's an exciting thing, and it's something I'd like to experiment with. But I just wonder, every genre that exists right now doesn't really work well for VR, and that's basically what everyone was saying in the talk. And so they were saying, like, whoever creates the killer app for VR would be like the next John Carmack or whatever. But it's going to be tough, I think, and from a businessman perspective, it seems like you're betting on something that has a limited audience, and then if you happen to be the guy that figures out the best usage of VR, then your game will probably sell to everyone who has a VR headset. But firstly, we don't really know how big that's going to be, and secondly, especially before the killer app hits, and secondly, everyone is, well, there's a lot of people who are apparently really excited about it and are going to be competing to be that, sort of best-in-class VR app. So, well, certainly I'd like to experiment with something VR, and of course, obviously, I'm working on Neverending Nightmares, and so I'm really tempted to do a VR port of Neverending Nightmares, and that was actually going to be a stretch goal. And I'm not really sure how it works, and I'm not really sure it will work. Like, one of my ideas is just to lock the screen to your face and not do head tracking, and apparently that can get you sick and you know, feel uncomfortable. But to some extent, Neverending Nightmares is about making you feel uncomfortable. So I'm not really sure how, you know, uncomfortable it would be, or how terrible that would be. But it's something to think about. But I mean, the thing, at least for Neverending Nightmares, that appeals to me about VR is that we have complete control over your senses, and that's really exciting to a game developer, is being able to completely take over your vision. You can't look away, or you know, we know what you're doing if you're trying to look away, or you know, like Neverending Nightmares is designed around headphones, because then we control exactly everything you hear, and we can do some really interesting things with 3D audio and all sorts of things like that. Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time to be a game developer, a scary time to be a game developer, just because, you know, you don't want to miss the next big wave, but I feel like that's always the case. But yeah, I don't know, certainly Steam Dev Days was very interesting, and I'm very glad I went, but kind of wonder what they're going to do next year, because I mean, like, you know, they're doing a bunch of huge, you know, game changers with Linux and Steam machines and the controller and VR, and it's like, what are they saving for next year if they do one next year? I don't know, but certainly it was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. So, thanks for watching.